Hi, I'm Limender, and I've been hooked on Pantheon, an MMORPG that's in early access and feels more like EverQuest than anything more modern. I've played a few different characters now, so it's time for an initial review. Pantheon is an old school MMORPG with some modern quality of life features and more to come. If you've played EverQuest before, you're going to feel right at home here. The game is designed for players who enjoy a slower, more meaningful experience. That doesn't mean it's full of unnecessary frustration, though. The developers are cutting out needless pain where they can. A great example is how health and mana regeneration works. It's slow by default, like EverQuest, but while you rest, the regen speeds up over time. So you sit for 10 seconds, you'll barely notice it. You sit for 30 seconds, and you'll see a decent chunk of your resources have returned. But you sit for a full minute, maybe a little more, and you'll likely be back to full. And the idea is that your downtime between fights feels more reasonable without letting regen be really overpowered during combat. Another thing that's straight from EverQuest is the consider system. When you target an NPC, you won't see its exact level. Instead, you have to push C, and that will consider the NPC, and you get a text line that tells you whether it's aggressive, passive, or friendly, its relative level based on its color, and whether it's a group mob or not. The color system is the classic, white being the same level as you, yellow, then orange, then red going up in difficulty away from you, higher level, and then blue, light blue, green, and gray in difficulty below you. Gray will award no XP. One big difference from EverQuest is that every class in Pantheon can solo to some extent. Many overworld mobs aren't elites, meaning you should be able to handle enemies that are under your level. Depending on your class, gear, and skill, with the right setup, you might even be able to take on orange mobs. Reds are likely out of reach most of the time. That said, Pantheon is designed for group play, so you'll almost always do better teaming up with a group. Gear in Pantheon is somewhat sparse, meaning upgrades can take time, but when you do get one, it is a big deal. At low levels, even finding one piece of gear with one useful stat can be exciting. Most gear is freely tradable though, and has no level requirement, so if you have a high level character and it finds a piece of gear that is useful for a different class, you could start that class and use that piece of gear likely right away. The exception is quest rewards, which do tend to be non-tradable. One frustration I have is that there is no in-game map yet. More than once I've accidentally wandered into a high level area and just got wrecked. From what I understand, an in-game map is planned, so this won't always be an issue. For now, when you do need a map, I recommend going to shallowsm.info. More on that later. Another thing I'd like to change is XP loss on death. Right now, dying reduces your XP and can even de-level you. I get that death should have a penalty, but losing a level feels too punishing sometimes. An alternative, instead of losing XP, you might lose an XP buff. Maybe every few minutes of grinding or every few kills, you build up a stacking XP buff up to maybe 50%. Then when you die, instead of directly losing XP, you lose some or all of that buff. This way, death still hurts, but it's a little less brutal, especially for tanks and pullers who tend to die more often. Of course, XP rates would probably need some balancing to make that work. So far, I've played 3 main characters. I have a summoner at 19, a cleric at 17, and a paladin at 13. I've been having a blast on all 3, but there is still a lot I don't know, and I'll keep playing and keep you posted as I learn more. Pantheon is still in early access, but the devs are consistently updating it every week, fixing issues and adding new content, including, at the time of recording, Druid is coming out next week. One last tip, if you are playing Pantheon, you should check out shallowsm.info. This site has a ton of useful information to help with your journey, including maps for a temporary solution until an in-game map is in play. Having a map is useful for finding NPCs and where to go for dungeons, like the Hellinar Cave dungeon down here. If you get lost in game, you can type /LOC. It will give you coordinates. You can come out to this map then and cursor over the map, find your coordinates in the map, and that will tell you where you are. If you do get extra lost or stuck, you can type /stuck, and that will bring you back to your bind point if needed. If you've made it this far and like what I've had to say, come hang out on Twitch. I stream most days. Lately, it's been mostly Pantheon, and I'm happy to answer any questions. The link will be in the description.